After a few personal jump scares, I was finally able to make a second trip to Japan, and this time I took basically a whole month of vacation there, almost all of February 2026, as opposed to my first Japan trip in August 2024 that was about a week. If you want to see an unedited vlog of literally everything I did on my February 2026 vacation, I have a video on that on my alternate profile Ange time. But in this video, I'm just going to focus on anything visual novel related I did on this Japan trip, whether it be buying visual novel merch, visiting various landmarks, or even meeting people in the visual novel industry in real life in some way. As far as the landmarks go for this visual novel pilgrimage I did, I have to give a huge shout out to Rinnow or UEU22 on Twitter, someone who has straight up made a Google map of various visual novel and eroge landmarks. It's very comprehensive, comprising all of Japan, not just Tokyo. This helped me find a lot of the more niche and unexpected landmarks that I would not have been able to find on my own. I'll link this Google map in the description. The first thing I did on my visual novel pilgrimage was actually a repeat of what I did on the trip I made in August 2024. Go to the Shibuya 109 building. Although on this trip, I actually went inside the building as opposed to just being outside in 2024 to see what the inside of the Shibuya 109 building looked like, which is apparently a shopping center for girls' fashion, which was certainly helpful for one of my travelees. As far as how this relates to visual novels, this building is shown in the Chaos Head and Chaos Child visual novels, though with the number changed to 107. Not too many events take place in the building itself in the VNs, but you do get to see the fate of the building in Shibuya during and after the events of Chaos Head's story. Just being able to see what goes on inside that building IRL is pretty neat. The next thing I did was actually the first meetup I did related to the visual novel industry. In this case, I met up with two visual novel translators, and we ended up going to a yakitori place called Yakitori Torikizoku in Ueno, though it is a popular chain throughout Tokyo, and a bar that focuses on Kirin beers called Kirin City. We just hung out and talked about a bunch of visual novel related stuff. The first translator I met was BarryBee, the founder and main translator of Daybreak Translations, a fan group who has translated stuff like the Akatsuki no Goei trilogy, the Yuzuki route in Ginro Haruka, Majikoi A+, and Howd After. The second translator I met is commonly credited as Alan N on several officially translated Shirobune titles, including the Destiny Star Girlfriend trilogy, Otome Domain, some parts of Tamayura Mirai, and apparently the upcoming Fuyukuru. I'm not going to post a picture of what they look like in real life since I imagine they want to keep that private, but I at least thought they were cool guys to talk to. The first new visual novel landmark I ended up visiting was actually a train gate in the Shinagawa station, more specifically the North Exit. There are trains constantly being ridden all throughout Japan. It is their prime and most popular and used public transportation. That means a train gate like this might not seem particularly special, but it looks like this train exit specifically is commonly used as background in the Asa Project visual novel Koikari Love for Hire, where the main character would see off various heroines whenever they had to leave. A relatively minor landmark, but one pretty cool to see anyway. The next landmark thankfully required me to stop at Shinagawa Station, so I was able to do a 2-in-1 that night. This one is a Prince Hotel Wedding Hall in Shinagawa. The Prince Hotel series seems to be pretty big in this area, and a big name in general, so I guess them having a fancy wedding hall makes sense. Anyway, this building is notable as it is a major building in the visual novel Hatsuki Sakura by Saga Planets. Without giving away heavy spoilers, this is a building heavily tied to the main character Hatsuyuki himself, with a lot of the mysteries and supernatural stuff being a big part of this building. The next landmark is the outside of a mall called Shiodome City Center in Taito City. I came at night, so I didn't really get to see many people, and I think it was a holiday, so a lot of stores were closed. Regardless, this is a background that shows up in the visual novel Marshmallow All the Way Home by Marmalade. It's not a background commonly used, but it was used a few times when the main character and at least one of the heroines has to go shopping, or whenever they have to scout their rival business Souvenir. The next landmark is Yoyogi Park, a place near Harajuku. This is a relatively simple nature park with a lot of trees. Unfortunately, the main place I wanted to see, a very shallow pool, was under construction for a new building. Regardless, this is yet another important area in Hatsuyuki Sakura. It's an area where the characters sometimes hung out, but more importantly, it's where one of the main heroines, Yoru Azuma, did a lot of her ice skating, with a decent amount of character drama around that. This one is going to seem weird and simple, but there's an area in Shibuya where if you go to a certain angle, you'll see a Japanese McDonald's in a big city on a street corner to the left side of the street. This is actually an area really commonly seen in the background of the visual novel G-sen no Mao. This is the heart of the main city in that VN, where the characters are usually hanging out or in some cases potentially heading to the next bit of drama, so pretty neat to see in real life. The next landmark is the Tokyo Metropolitan Art Museum, which is in the greater Ueno area right next to Ueno Park. As the name implies, it's an art museum focused on artwork made by citizens, and I guess somehow the most notable ones get put up for visitors to check out in various rooms for free. In the visual novel Kara no Shoujo, this area is very commonly explicitly shown as a place that the characters have to go to, and is even commonly choosable on the map select screens. A few major characters are art students, and in KNS 1 and 3 specifically, a few of the murders revolve around artists as well. Since Kara no Shoujo takes place in the 1950s, there was sadly no way I was going to see a quirky blonde woman show me around, or there being the existence of any painting that looked like a girl in the shell. The next major landmark was Nezu Shrine in the Bunkyo ward of Tokyo. Apparently it's one of the oldest places of worship in this city, and several buildings in that shrine have been designated as important cultural properties. That said, as far as the visual novel reference goes, this relates to the recently translated ASA Project visual novel Ren'ai 0 Kilometer, where one of the side heroines, Himuroya, actually works as a shrine maiden at an in-game shrine that's clearly modeled after Nezu. This next one is a huge cope, but one of the places I've always wanted to go to, but I just couldn't because things didn't line up, was Comiket, which is basically the biggest convention in Japan for doujinshi and even visual novel related goods. When I went to Toyosu Market, I decided to go to the Tokyo Big Side, aka the place where Comiket usually takes place, since it was only about a couple train stops away. I just took a quick video inside and outside just to hope that I'll be able to go there when it's Comiket season sometime in the future. However, it's also noteworthy that a few visual novels with nerdy heroines actually have them go to Comiket in-game itself, with notable ones being ASA Project visual novels Sankaku Ren'ai and Fureraba Ren'ai clearly having the background of the Tokyo Big Side area, and even being able to see outside it. Next, we have a few spots that are like 5 to 10 minute walks from Akihabara. There is a walkway right outside the Yushima Seido Shrine, which has a Confucius mausoleum. This walkway is used in some important scenes in Sakura Moyu, a visual novel developed by Favorite. There's also a Shohei Bashi Higashizumi Bridge and its nearby park, which is a 5-minute or less walk from Akihabara as well. It's a really short park where you can just sit down, relax, read or something, and you can use the nearby bridge to cross to the other side of the water. This is also another background in Sakura Moyu, though this one is used as an important choice point where you have to select the heroine route you want to go on. I'm going to talk a little bit more about Akihabara later, but there's one landmark I want to talk about before I talk about that city in full. So there's a popular store series in various Japanese cities called Yodobashi that focuses on electronics. However, the one in Akihabara has a few more floors than the usual one, including popular clothing stores like Umineko. But more importantly, the 9th floor has a pretty popular baseball batting center. I'm pretty sure that this is the basis for the baseball batting center in the visual novel Sousaku Kanojo no Ren'ai Koshiki, a decently important spot in the VN because it provides character building for the main character and two of his love interests, Aisa and Kiriha. Now we're going to go into the neighborhood of Kichioji, a neighborhood in the city of Musashino. The first place I explored was a cash-only, hole-in-the-wall coffee shop called Kukutsuso. It felt really classy and had pretty solid sweets and coffee options. I liked their layered cheesecake and black coffee. This landmark was used as a basis once again in Sousaku Kanojo no Ren'ai Koshiki. In this case, it was really common to meet Kiriha and her manager here, since this is where Kiriha talked about her work and didn't have to put on her public act with her fake nice personality. It also ends up being a date spot a few times in the story. Continuing in Kichioji, just right outside the main JR train station in Kichioji, there's somewhat of a notable landmark that has an interesting elephant statue in a small area in front of the station you could sit down to relax. Once again, in Sousaku Kanojo no Ren'ai Koshiki, this is a spot where the main character Toshiki would usually meet up for dates or at least meetups with the other girls. There's also a few emotional moments that take place in this background that's clearly based off the Kichioji station. One of the main attractions of the city of Kichioji is the Sun Road Shopping District. It has a high translucent roof and offers a mix of local affordable shops, cafes, drugstores, and restaurants, making it popular for both locals and tourists like me. This was clearly the basis for, once again, Sousaku Kanojo. Could you tell that this city was a really popular spot for making this VN? Anyway, this is a place where the characters usually hung out or met each other for eating or various other small events. Now we're going to get into one of the places I was extremely excited to go when planning out my trip. On the west side of Tokyo, in Tama City, there's a small, quaint little neighborhood called Karakita. This part of the neighborhood has a small park where you can do some mini hiking. I saw a few older people walking it when I arrived in the late morning. But most importantly, this neighborhood was clearly the basis for the visual novel Rewrite. More specifically, it's the neighborhood where the main character Kotaro and one of my favorite visual novel heroines of all time, Kotori, live. Obviously I didn't go to anyone's house because that would be fucking weird, but just seeing the outside, even very briefly, and walking around was easily one of my favorite parts of this Japan trip. Just one train stop away from the Karakita neighborhood was still part of Tama City, but this time it was a little mall and shopping area right outside Tama Center Station called the Keio Tama Center or Tama Center Station area. This is actually used in the very popular visual novel Subarashiki Hibi or Wonderful Everyday, fairly occasionally, mostly in lighthearted slice of life moments. One of the landmarks that was quite the long walk to even find was Shimizu Gaoka Park in Minami Ward, Yokohama City. Just getting to the spot required a lot, and I mean a lot of steps to climb, and being the out-of-shape sedentary guy I usually am, I had to catch my breath multiple times. I swear the Japanese have legs and lungs of steel with how much they have to walk. But I also had to go through a bunch of roads to even find the real landmark I wanted, an important Japanese hackberry tree in said park. I had to literally use exact longitude and latitude coordinates to pinpoint the exact spot because this park is decently big with multiple areas. But thankfully, it was worth it, as this is a pretty important tree in the visual novels Muv-Luv and Kimi ga Nozomu Ein. This tree is used in backgrounds and CGs in very romantic related scenes. Thankfully, this is one of the few spots where someone made a YouTube video showing exactly where it was, so that helped me in addition to using the exact coordinates. This is probably one of the strangest landmarks for me to care about, but there's an area called Hiranuma Sawaya Park in Yokohama that looks like a nice small area near a hotel and a river. However, a lot of Nippon steelworkers were clearly doing construction, so I was really limited on where I can get pictures and stuff, but I made sure to behave. But see those circular, I guess we can call building objects in the background? That's how I was able to figure out this is a landmark used in one of my favorite moege visual novels, Destiny Star Girlfriend 2. More specifically, it's the area where the main character finds the star of this VN, Maja, being literally homeless before eventually taking her into his house. I'm sad I couldn't find the exact looking park where he found her, but just being able to recognize the circular buildings was good enough for me. This next area is one I didn't even know about until BarryBee told me about it when I met up with him earlier in the month. But basically, there's a small touristy garden in Nishikahara, Kita City, Tokyo called Kyu Furukawa Gardens. This is a small park where you pay, I think it was 150 yen, really cheap, and you basically just get to have a little nature walk, seeing a Japanese-style garden, a Western-style rose garden, and a Western-style mansion, all of which were built in the early 20th century. If you couldn't tell, this little mansion was apparently actually used as the basis for the guest house in the Umineko visual novel series, one of the most important locations of that VN since, well, a lot of the family drama and killings end up happening in and around said guest house. Unfortunately, I couldn't go inside the mansion since it was reserved for what looked to be wedding pictures, which sucks because I heard that if the mansion was available, you could do tea parties, which once again is really fitting for the Umineko series. The next landmark was an outlet mall right next to the Kaihin Makuhari station in Chiba Prefecture called Mitsui Outlet Park Makuhari. It's got a lot of notable big shopping stores, even Westerners might recognize ones like Gap or Tommy Hilfiger, and some decent food and cafe options. But most importantly for me, this is the basis of the outlet mall background used in many scenes in the visual novel Making Lovers by Smee. I vividly remember this background at the way beginning of the VN where the MC goes with Akko to this area, and where he re-meets Karen again for the first time. But I think the MC takes all the heroines to this outlet mall in the VN at least once. On the way to what was probably my favorite part of my vacation, Enoshima Island, I had to take a slow but scenic electric railway just to reach a nearby station that was within walking distance to the main island in question. I also had to cross a small bridge called Koshigoe Bridge, which was within walking distance on the way to my destination. Both of these locations are from Sousaku Kanojo no Ren'ai Koshiki. As you can tell, this trip had a lot of landmarks from this specific visual novel. Thankfully, a lot of them were documented thanks to rinnow and just happened to be in spots that I wanted to travel to anyway. Now, the name Koshigoe Bridge is a reference to the visual novel Tsujidou-san no Junai Road. More specifically, Koshigoe was clearly used as the last name for one of the main heroines, Maki. Speaking of Enoshima Island, it's apparently a really popular tourist attraction, and technically not a part of Tokyo at all, being about a 60 to 75 minute southwest train ride away, as it's on the Sagabi Bay coast in Kanagawa Prefecture. There are a lot of fun attractions to do here, like trying out a lot of street food, taking a boat to see a really popular cave attraction, as well as visiting its shrine and a popular tower called the Sea Candle. A view of the island is consistently seen in the visual novel Tsujidou-san no Junai Road, and that visual novel properly refers to that area as Enoshima, where the characters live and partake in events. That said, as far as this specific island goes, it's the place where the main character Hiroshi and the main heroine Ai Tsujidou go on a date in the common route, and I got to see a lot of similar sites that were shown in the visual novel, having CGs and backgrounds that were clearly the basis of what's depicted in the actual real-life Enoshima Island. Even off the island itself, there's an Enoshima monument on the bridge you cross to reach the island, and this bridge is a common place where characters have very dramatic interactions, whether romantic or huge fights taking place. Next we have Kabukicho, home to the relatively infamous red light district in Japan, aka where a lot of degenerate stuff like host bars, brothels, and the like happens. Just make sure you don't go out at night, because during the day, things are relatively safe, with cinemas, game arcades, and even a Koreatown called Shin Okubo. Many people will likely see Kabukicho as the basis for the Yakuza or Like a Dragon series, but for me, I was actually inspired by the visual novel Restless Sheep and the Lone Wolf by Clock Up. This VN was willing to show a lot of the darkest parts of Kabukicho with no hesitation, including the fact that the main character and the main heroine basically live in a hotel that is clearly okay with allowing people to have sex with prostitutes in said hotel and stuff. I actually saw a hotel on the way to Koreatown that reminded me of the same color aesthetic as the hotel the Restless Sheep main duo stayed at, but obviously I can't tell for sure because I didn't go inside. The only other meetup I did IRL with someone I knew from the visual novel scene is someone who would prefer to keep their identity a secret. We ate at a recommended izakaya-ish place called Koikari in Ikebukuro. This person was fun to talk to about the visual novel industry. Yokohama has one of the largest Chinatowns in the entire world, boasting over 600 shops and restaurants. I certainly got a nice first-person view in the crowds. I also ate at a decently fancy Chinese restaurant with really good dim sum, and also got some street food like a really big meat bun. As far as visual novels go, the Destiny Star Girlfriend series has the main character take at least 2 of the main heroines on dates in this Yokohama Chinatown. And from what I see, a lot of Destiny Star in general is based on Yokohama. But for me, the Chinatown is important because there is a scene in Destiny Star Girlfriend 2 where the main heroine of the game, Maja, had a CG where she's eating a really big pork bun, which admittedly is partly what motivated me to get one myself, but also just really like Chinese meat buns in general. The next landmark I went to is actually called Yokohama Landmark Tower. It is a huge tower with a hotel and an observation area with 360-degree views. We didn't explore this area a lot. We just wanted to see this fancy indoor mall which had some interesting looking stores, including a Shonen Jump themed store. As far as this area relates to visual novels, there's a spot in the common art of the visual novel Riddle Joker by Ubisoft, where the main character and the main heroines go out for swimsuit shopping. While only a minor event in that VN, it was convenient, it was in Yokohama, and I got to see what said mall looked like in real life. The last thing I did in Yokohama was go to an area that had 2 landmarks right next to each other, the World Porters Mall and a small theme park called Cosmo World, with an easy-to-see roller coaster and Ferris wheel with a big digital clock in the center. We only briefly went inside World Porters Mall before heading to our next destination, but it was really big. I could have definitely spent like half a day here alone if I really wanted to. As far as how this relates to visual novels, it's actually another background in the Destiny Star Girlfriend trilogy. In addition to Chinatown, as mentioned earlier, this is an area where the main character tends to take the heroines on for dates, so it's pretty cool to see said date spot in real life. The final new landmark I visited was Lazuna Kawasaki Plaza. If there's one thing I learned about Japan this trip, is that it has a lot of fancy indoor and even outdoor malls, and this one was no different. There were some nice stores for clothing shopping, and of course, good food. It was a maybe 30-minute train ride from the Haneda airport, which was convenient because I went to this mall on the last day before I had to sadly board my plane back to America. But anyway, as far as this relates to visual novels, this is literally the first background you see in Fureraba Friends to Lovers by Smee. It's a scene where the main character and his friend Genki are crying about not having a girlfriend, and best girl Rina properly roasts the shit out of them for it. I have particular nostalgia for this since this was the first scene of the first Smee visual novel I ever read, especially now since Smee is now possibly one of, if not my all-time favorite Moyu developer. Right before boarding my plane back to America, due to the request of one of my travelees, we actually went back to a landmark that I visited in my August 2024 trip, the Daishi Bridge over the Tama River in Kawasaki Prefecture. This is a reference to the Majikoi visual novel series, more specifically, the Bridge of Weirdos that the characters cross constantly throughout the series. Majikoi is my favorite visual novel of all time, so I'm definitely not complaining when coming back to this area. So far, I've talked a lot about all the landmarks based on visual novels that I went to on this trip, but now I want to get to something really important. Any physical merch that I bought that was visual novel related while in Japan. As long as you go to the right cities, there are places to find visual novel stuff, as I've highlighted in a previous video if you want to review all the major visual novel stores that I'm aware of. But anyway, the first major visual novel related thing I bought was at Animate in Ikebukuro. This is considered by far the biggest anime store in the world, and it shows, with over 7 floors of just anime related goods. Thankfully, this includes well-timed anime adaptations of visual novels, and I was able to find merch for the Nukitashi anime, and I ended up getting a plushie of the mascot from Nukitashi, Hamadori. One thing I definitely took advantage of while in Japan is go to things called pop-up shops. It seems like the idea is that they are common limited time merch stores where you can buy merch in person to get items faster before they hopefully get on online stores later. At the Ikebukuro JR train station, I was actually able to find one for the Umineko series that had merch of unique artwork for the major witches in the series in Valentine's Day specific wear just for the month of February 2026. I personally got a little folder of Beatrice and Erika, since Erika is my personal favorite heroine in the Umineko series, though I like Beatrice well enough too. The Nakano Broadway is a multi-story shopping complex in Nakano, Tokyo. Famous as a hub for anime, manga, and otaku culture, often compared to Akihabara but with a more laid-back, collector-focused atmosphere. That said, there's literally only one store with visual novels, and it's like one small shelf in a Mandarake Deep store. Nothing compared to what I saw in Akihabara. So sadly, this is the first store I wanted to bring up, but I just wasn't able to buy anything in. Thankfully, that does bring us to what will always be my favorite city in Japan, Akihabara. This is literally the place to find anime, manga, and electronic stores just about anywhere. Just walk down a street or two, and you will find a store you'll like. There have been complaints that prices have been jacked up in Akihabara or whatever, but I still think this is a good, easy spot to find weeb stuff, especially if you like popular series, then you're bound to see a ton of merch from anime and gacha games. Thankfully, as far as visual novel stuff goes, Akihabara is easily the best city to go to for visual novel related merch. I actually want to start by talking about a few notable places that I first found out about and visited on this February 2026 trip before going back to areas that I previously visited in 2024. There is a Melon Books gallery store, and in the month that I went, they actually had a month-long exhibit for the Aokana and Koichako series. It was a little tiny room on the 3rd floor that had some merch and other stuff for both VNs. Sadly, I ended up not buying anything, mostly because there was a Mashiro Udon sweater that was just a bit too big for me. I wanted a medium size, but they only had large and very large. The next new VN store I found was called Lashinbang, which I only found out through Nook Gaming's site. That said, there's only visual novel stuff on the 2nd floor and a small 18+ section with maybe a couple of small rows of shelves with visual novel physical copies and goods. Most of the merch were lewd body pills and stuff, so I didn't bother buying anything, but this is another store to add if you really want more VN stores to look at while in Akihabara. Also in Lashinbang, on what I think was the 3rd or 5th floor, there was a temporary month-long pop-up shop for the anime adaptation of Nukitashi. Unfortunately, it focused on lingerie artwork of the big 3 of the FS, and well, I don't really like owning lewd stuff of anime and VN characters in my apartment. The merch was literally limited to these big 3 who aren't even my favorite characters from Nukitashi, so I ended up not buying anything. Continuing on pop-up shops, there was a temporary one for Majikoi, more specifically the Majikoi A series, which was inside the Akiba Gamer store on the 5th floor near the Love Live stuff. Sadly, as much as I love the Majikoi series, this pop-up shop focused on heroines that I'm personally fine with, but none that I like enough to buy merch for, aka Benkei, Yoshitsune, and Margit. So I sadly ended up not getting anything, but I have plenty of Majikoi stuff at home, so that's okay. There was also a pop-up shop for the 9-9 anime adaptation. This one only took up the front of a random anime shop in Akihabara for about a month. I thankfully had watched the 9-9 anime adaptation by this point, but unfortunately, I did not like any of the main 4 heroines enough to want to actually get some merch for them. Still, it was nice to see merch of this series front and center of a store, especially for an anime adaptation of a visual novel that didn't seem to be particularly well watched. Easily my favorite newest find, which was completely by accident, was figuring out there was a visual arts key store on the 5th floor of a small branch right next to Animate Akihabara. Apparently, it opened up in mid to late 2025. But as the name implies, this is a store that has a lot of merch related to anything key. It even has a TV that constantly loops between various openings from key visual novels. That said, a big focus on the store was on Summer Pockets since the anime adaptation aired in 2025. That series owned the vast majority of merch that I saw. Thankfully, there was apparently a key collab cafe that happened sometime in the past, and they still had stickers of some of the main heroines from all key series that featured there. So I ended up getting stickers of my girl Kotori from Rewrite, as well as other key heroines I like, including Kud from Little Busters, Yuri from Angel Beats, and Misuzu from Air. It's also worth noting that one floor below this key store is a floor specifically for Heaven Burns Red merch. or at least it was when I went in February 2026. I actually got a Kanade Tachibana sticker that seems to be based on the art of one of the Angel Beats crossovers. I have no intention of playing Heaven Burns Red, but I'll definitely support the best girl of one of my favorite anime, Angel Beats. I should probably play the first Beat VN sometime. Now I'm going to quickly go into everything else I bought from the Akihabara stores that I found in 2024 because I really liked them. I got 3 physical copies of eroge visual novels. Marshmallow All the Way Home from Soft Map Amusement, Hatsuki Sakura from Trader Headquarters, and Meteor World actor Badge and Dagger as a gift. I got a lot of stickers from various stores. In addition to the key store ones I mentioned above, at the Yuzusoft specialty store, I got ones for Ririko and Sumiki from Limelight Lemonade Jam, Kurumi from Reboot, and Lena from Senran Banka. From K-Books Akihabara, I got a sticker of Shizuku from Summer Pockets, and a small picture advertisement of all the characters from the Key Collab Cafe I mentioned from the Key store. And that wraps things up for my visual novel pilgrimage video. As you can tell, that was quite a lot, and I had to summarize my trip quite a bit just to fit it into a video that wasn't too long. But considering the whole trip was about a month, I wanted to fit in as much visual novel stuff as I could. If you want to see everything that I did on this trip, you can go to my alt channel where I have an almost 2-hour vlog of literally everything I did with no editing, including non-visual novel related stuff. You may have noticed that 99% of the things that I did were in the Tokyo area. The current plan is that in 2027, hopefully my travelees and I can go to other popular parts of Japan like Kyoto and Osaka, which will of course include more visual novel landmark visiting. But for now, hopefully this visual novel pilgrimage I did in February 2026 was at least entertaining to watch and maybe even give you some ideas of what you might want to do if you were ever to vacation in Tokyo, Japan sometime in the future. If you have any commentary or questions about my visual novel focused Japan trip, feel free to leave a comment below.